My name is Michael King. I'm a plein air artist and studio painter. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope I can earn your subscription here. We're going to cover how to paint more loosely. You're probably here because you're a tight painter and you get caught up in a lot of the details. And so you just want to be able to paint a little bit looser. And so this is an exercise to help you start training yourself to how to paint looser. All right. And we will be painting these two cherries. Now, the reference images for these cherries are in the description below. You can download them from my website. Just click the link, right click and say save as image. And we have this primary image of these cherries. And so the whole idea of painting looser is instead of just going in and trying to paint everything that you see, it's very more specific. First of all, you want to find a shape. Then you want to mix your color in the right value, and then make sure it's the right temperature, and then put it in that shape. And if you do that for all the shapes, you should come out with a very loose painting, unless of course you start blending. And to avoid blending, we're going to do the technique of strokes. Specifically, you can count your strokes to be able to limit yourself if that really helps. But the idea will be you will be mixing a paint and you'll be putting it down and you'll be leaving it. All right. If you need to adjust it afterwards, just make sure you need to adjust it and don't bother going in and fiddling. Don't do this back and forth and keep on doing that. So that's going to be part of the technique. And overall, over time, if you keep trying this, it'll actually loosen up your painting style. And so one of the aspects of finding shapes within an image is you can actually print it out. If you're working from images, you can print it out and simply take a Sharpie or something like that and just outline, like for instance, this is the main dark shape of this left-hand cherry. All right. And this is the main dark of this right-hand cherry. So you map that out, and then you can see another shape in here. Map that out. You can see tinier shapes. So always go from big shapes to small shapes. Down here, another big shape. You got the reflective light here. It's another shape over here. You can see how interesting it is. And if you keep on looking for shapes and finding shapes, you're mixing the color that you want in the correct value and the correct temperature, placing it on in a direct manner, conscious manner, like a stroke. Then it prevents you from going in with a fine detail brush, holding at the tip like a pencil, and just going in like this. And what happens is you get so tight and you do a lot of blending, you get muddy areas, and you don't really know how to fix it. Or in general, maybe you just want to loosen up your painting style so you can be a little more free and have a little more fun. So having said that, let's get started with just a sketch. Now, if you want to use this as purely a exercise of trying to paint looser, what you can do is you can take some charcoal, rub it on the back of your reference sheet, flip it back over, put it over your substrate, and just trace the lines of the objects and all the shapes that you created previously, and then pull it off, and voila, you have it on your board. That just saves a lot of time. I highly encourage you to sketch it out though, because everyone has a particular style when they sketch. I like to stretch things out longer for some reason, and I'm very conscious and aware of it, but I don't stop it either, because it's part of what I do. It's part of what makes me and my style what I am. So we'll just start out with the cherry, and we'll give it some boundaries. This sketch shouldn't take long. Anytime you want to ask questions, feel free. I look over to chat occasionally. I'm just trying to get where I want to be. And when you're sketching something like cherries especially, what they look like after you're done compared to the reference photo doesn't matter. If someone can look at your painting after and say, oh yeah, those are cherries, I really like those, I really like how they're painted, then you've been successful. So as long as it looks like a cherry in the end, you're golden. And don't fret over being exact. And then we have this line here. just for reference, I'll bring them up on the screen for you so you can see what I'm going after. So this here, those are the cherries. These are the outlines. Close enough is good enough. So this right-hand cherry I find is a little bit above the bottom of this left-hand cherry. So I originally got this photo off pixabay.com, which is a free reference for royalty-free images. But I had to modify it and overlap the cherries because they were just touching each other, and I don't find that's a very good composition. So what I did is I brought the right-hand cherry behind the left-hand cherry. And we'll bring this in like this. Bring this more like that. And we have this shape here. So I'm just going to put in the main dark shapes so you can get the idea, and maybe a couple of secondary shapes as well. And even these shapes, they don't have to be 100% accurate. As long as they're close, you know, you should be good. So we have a highlight here. I like how this comes down and this actually comes up. Come around. And I generally sketch in straight lines. I find it's a little more forgiving than if you were to start painting in curves. And here we'll do this main shape. We'll come around, do that. Kind of comes over here. And this comes down, does a little quick jog. And so that's the main dark shape. And then we have a secondary larger shape here with some highlights in there. And you can be finicky and paint in or draw in the, you know, the highlight shapes and whatnot, but I think we should be good just be doing this. And so now we have the stems. This shape comes in like this. This stem is over here. This comes in like that. Then we come down and we have a stem. Pretty simple stuff. Live stream, I can't really fast forward anything, so you got to live with it. And I really like soft vine charcoal because you can easily just erase it, whether you're on canvas or on board. This is a little 6x6 board that I have, and it comes up there like this. It has a little knobby. So you can see it's close. It's not exact, but it don't matter because in the end we're going to want to just paint the cherries. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here. All right, and then of course we have the shadows. So we have one here, this one down here. Kind of comes around and in and around. And they're just shapes. I'll fill them in. Alright, so I'm not going to bother painting a background just to save some time. And we're going to start mixing our colors. So this main dark color, we know it's a red, obviously. Matching the exact color is irrelevant. I'm going to mix some alizarin crimson, permanent alizarin crimson, and some ultramarine blue to get a nice dark red. And those two pigments are transparent, so it's actually going to be a benefit. Now this image, I would say, is lit with cool light, so that means the shadows are going to be a little bit warmer. All right. So the idea is find the position you need to be in, put a stroke in, leave it, put a stroke in, leave it, put a stroke in, leave it. And if you want, you can count your strokes. This way it really limits you from going in and trying to blend everything together. A little dark in here, and we fill in this edge here, or this side where it's nice and dark. There we go. I think I'm going to make it a little bit darker because you can see from the image here on the right, it looks like this shadow on this cherry is a little bit darker than in here. So I just add a little bit more ultramarine blue. Mix that in. There we go. A little cooler. and a little darker primarily. And so the next dark on the other cherry, mixing the same thing, ultramarine blue and the permanent alizarin crimson. I'm going to throw in a little bit of cad red, because you know these edges here will blend in each other, but I do want a slightly different hue, I guess. I don't really think in color. I think more in value and temperature. So we're just gonna do a stroke. And I do have a previous video I did back 4 years ago. It's painting a blue plum, Italian blue plum. And I do go ahead and I count all my strokes. And you can find it in my playlist or on my channel somewhere. All right. Let's leave it at that. And now I want to go to my next stage. Actually, this kind of curves around a little bit. I'm just going to bring this in like this. There we go. So I'm going to go to my next stage. I'm going to paint more of the midtones. And so by midtones, I mean the values that are lighter than the darks, but not as light as the reflected light or the highlights, of course. So I'm going to go back to my permanent alizarin. I'm going to throw in some cad red. More cad red than permanent alizarin. And I'm going to do a test stroke. I'd say that's a bit too reddy red, so more alizarin. And that starts getting a little dark, so I'm going to add a touch of white just to bring down the value, because I'm looking for value first. Still a little bit too cad red. And of course, you could paint it that way. It's your choice. I throw in a smidge of ultramarine blue and do a mix. I wish I could show you my palette. Let's try this. Okay, a little bit lighter, so more white. So all these are just little tests. A little more white, and I'm going to throw in some cad red just to pump up the temperature a little bit. So now we have I think I do more testing than I do painting. You think you have it, and then you don't. Do another test. Yeah, I can live with that. So these are the next bits of color. And you don't want it, I mean, if you have your sketch, of course, you don't have to paint at the edges. You can go over stuff as long as you remember what to do next. And then we'll move over to this other cherry. I like how this is. And then we'll darken this area over here. There we are. So just lay a stroke in. If you want a little bit darker, mix it again. Go in, put your value in. Because it is a little bit darker in that crater there, where the stem meets. Good. And so again, we're going to lay in the color. You can paint over the stem or you can leave it. It's up to you. And we have an interesting shape here. This comes up like that. But it also does a little jog, I find. It's like this comes here, like that, and then the wishbone is down. So we have a shape like that. So seeing these shapes is something you need to train your eye for. But eventually it will come. Especially if you're doing something from life. Painting from life is amazing. Something down here. I missed a dark on this side, so I'm going to go back. Mix some of my dark value. There's just a little sliver of dark here. There we go. I'll go back to that other value. Cut into that dark, because it is a thin dark. I don't want it too large. All right. And now we want to take our next shape, mix our color. I think it needs to be a little bit lighter. There we are. And there's that highlight there. I'll leave a little square showing just as a reminder that that's where it needs to be. And I see this come down a little bit like this. All right, reflective things, especially, you wouldn't think of cherries as reflective, but they are. They have very strange shapes to them sometimes. And then here, there's another shape and his value. This goes into that one. This comes down. So every time I paint, I'm painting specifically. I'm just not filling in a specific area. And this works great for portraits as well. I'm going to test this over here. Yeah, I'm going to use this value over here. Because as it progresses from here to here, it gets cooler. So I will fill this in where I see that shape. And as it goes over, I'll add some cobalt, and we will cool it off. And it's up to you how much you want to add. So if you want to beef it up a little more cobalt in there, have a little more blue, go ahead. I mean, the whole idea is if you see temperature shift, you're free to add whatever you want. Color, believe it or not, doesn't really matter that much. Value and color temperature are the most important. This actually comes over this way. And I'll bring this up a little bit here. And I don't really see this color exactly in here. It's a little bit darker. So I'll just add more blue. More cobalt. And I'll see how that works. There we go. It's actually getting a little bit violet, which is fine. And this shape here, I put in as a big stroke, but I'm going to refine it using this value here. So this comes down on the bottom. Comes up like this. This actually is more like that. There we go. And there's a shape in here that's a little more red. So I'll bring that in, lighten it up a bit. Just mixing my various colors here, a little bit of Gamsol. A little bit better. You know, there will be a reflective light on this side, but right now I'm just trying to get in this value in that shape. Nope, that's both the same. All right, let's put a little dark here on that edge. And I'm going to add dark on this edge here. Kind of got lost. I think I'm going to have to mix up a new dark. So just because you put something down initially doesn't mean you can't change it. There we are. So I'm going to make this a little bit darker. When I first put down my darks, it was against the white, and so it looked dark, but when I have all the other values on there now, it doesn't look so dark. And so painting is nothing more than a series of corrections, right? So if you start off too light, you can go back in and make it a little more dark. Come up, refine that shape in there. Find the shape here. Lose those edges, they're not really important. All right, in there, you know they overlap, your eye visually sees it. And we'll add a little dark in here. A little dark in here. There we go, that's better. And this dark comes down here like this. There's a little dark here. There's a dark down here. There we go. So everything was a deliberate stroke. It looks like a mishmash, but we're building it up, right? We're going from underneath to the foreground. So let's go a little bit lighter now. We won't go to the full highlights, but we'll go to some minor reflected lights. So we got the white reflecting onto the red, which is a cooler color. So if we have a cool light reflecting on a cool color, it's going to bounce back cool. So it's going to be a cool red, a lighter cool red. So we'll mix some permanent alizarin and some white and some ultra marine. We want to get a light color, but not so light that it's lighter than this. We want this to be subtle because it's underneath. So we'll do a quick test. Not dark or not light enough. Here we go. Mixing more alizarin, more white, maybe a little bit of cad red. Not bad. Maybe a little bit of cobalt blue, but then some white because the cobalt blue darkens it. Here we are. So this isn't the exact color that we see on the page, but it doesn't matter. First of all, if you're painting from photos, the colors you're painting aren't accurate in the first place, right? Because they're from a photo and then you get it from your printer, etc. Whereas if you're painting from life, you can really see what the colors are. Moving that up like this. And we do have a larger reflected light here, but it's more subtle. So we'll take some alizarin and some white. We'll do a test here. A little bright cobalt blue, some white. Do a little test. For now I can live with that because it's down here. So we'll do a stroke. Stroke. It kind of comes into that area as well. So you can see the difference between those two aren't very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to strengthen that red value here. It's a bit too light. There we go. A couple strokes there. So now you can see a discernible difference between the side reflected light and that value. So it's give and take, back and forth. And now the value on the top here is a little bit brighter reflected light than this. And I've added a little bit of blue to it to enhance it. There we go. And we'll come up here, put that in. One stroke. It's not important that you put it in one stroke. You just put it in a controlled stroke, right? I mean, these cherries are a little small. And it kind of comes up to there. But I'm still using a 1/4 inch brush to paint these. And we have some values up here. And I'll build that up as we go. And I think we can pretty much use this same value here. For now, I think I might have to lighten it. Get that shape. And then we'll come down. kind of bends in, and then it meets that other reflection. And with the synthetic brushes, it's nice because you can get really nice sharp edges. So you don't have to use a small brush. You don't need to use a number 3 round. Then we're going to come up, do that edge, and there's a slight reflected light there. We won't make it as light as the rest. This comes down a little bit. We may be able to use this to put in this for now. That's the main highlight. All right, but it's not as bright as it needs to be yet. Come in. Do have a there we go. Stand back once in a while, look at it. It's already, they already have a painterly feel to them, right? We can soften some edges in a while, you'll see. If you had a background, you can bring it up and of course soften the edges around the cherries. Now we have to deal with this spot here. I want to make it a little warmer. There we are. Let's get some more pigment. Nice. And you can start, if you want to start refining even more, you can put a little more pigment in where you want and put a little more warmth, right, to bring things out. So those are the kind of the main highlights and the main darks of the image, or the two raspberries. I'm going to just move into the stem. Before I do that though, I'm just going to soften some edges. I'll bring out a nice soft brush, dry brush, and I don't want that so harsh, so I'll just touch that up. I will be putting pigment over top of this, but I'm kind of preparing it. There we go. And you can see what I mean by softening our edges. So if we want to soften that edge, there we are. So now for the stem, it's pretty easy. It's a light green, so maybe a cobalt and some Hansa. It's pretty light value. It's a little warm. It's quite warm actually. It's very green, but it's cool. You get a lot of worms in the stem. So we'll put this down as a base because I can see the shadow side here coming down, coming into here. There we are. Get the shape of that stem down. I'll put the stem in as well. Nice. It's really yellow up here, so there's no real need for green. And we'll go a bit lighter for the light side of the stem. Notice I'm still using that 1/4 inch brush, even though the stem is much thinner and smaller than the rest of the cherries. And so that's another way to start helping yourself paint looser. Always choose a brush larger than you need and learn how to manipulate that brush. Do a little stroke test. I think I want to go a little bit lighter. You add white, of course, it cools it down. It's a cool light, so that's fine. But you got to do a test just to make sure, yeah, it's too cool. So I'm going to add a little bit of yellow in there to warm it up. So color temperature, huge in my opinion. More important than color itself. A little more. And we'll get that. There we go. Probably could do with some more yellow in there though. Ah, that's better. I'll come in and I'll put this in as well. Again, controlling my strokes. If I wanted to, I could pick a smaller brush. But for now, I'm just going to stick with this. And as you get up here, you get more of an orange. So I'm going to throw in some yellow ochre, transparent orange. And it's quite dark, so maybe some burnt sienna to darken it up a bit. A little touch. Too light. Some more sienna. So value is key. So value first. So I think I got the value. Put that in. That's nice. And so this area here is pretty big. I'm going to darken that value again here and put in some items, just some touches here and here. And as we get up, we get that dark red again. So switching over to my other brush here. So we'll kind of use that mixture, but we'll throw in some dark reds. And we'll just put in there. And it gets a little bit darker. And here, you could argue that's too dark. It kind of takes away from everything else, but just maybe just soften it. A little dark area here and here. And these little splotches on the stem itself, right? Just add the odd dark area and it helps bring it all together. So controlled stroke, controlled stroke. Let's get that a little bit darker. There we go. And we have some of this coming up here as well. So it's the perceived illusion that you're creating when you're doing painterly, right? A little darker. And I'm going to get darker yet in that cavity area where the stem meets the cherry. And we're just going to touch that in there. There we are. It's a good basis. Now we're going to go back up to this top area and we're going to add some lights. Doesn't require a lot because we're not painting the details, right? We're painting just kind of the essence of things. And we got a little bit of light area up here too. And now we're going to finish off the cherries. Oh, and we have the shadow to deal with too. So I'm going to clean up the edges a little bit though first. So I'll just clean my brush right off. And we'll just do a quick stroke. Soften that edge at the same time. Helps clean everything up. And if that bothers you, because I got a little bit of paint on it, if you have a background, you can paint over it. If you're not doing a background, just put your brush in some mineral spirit, odorless mineral spirits, and clean up that edge. Right. If you want, you can get your paper towel out and do a little clean as well. So we're going to throw in the shadow, and we're going to use like a cobalt blue for the shadow. We're going to build it up in stages. All right, maybe we'll add a tiny bit of red into it just so we can get a reflection of the cherries in the shadow. But our darker shadow is down here, right by the cherries themselves. So put in a stroke, and the light's coming this way, so this elongated shadow, the darker shadow is going to be longer on the right than it is the left. There we are. And I could easily just fill this whole shadow in with this and repaint it, the lighter areas, or the lighter areas lighter on top of the dark. But instead of that, I'm going to control how I paint. So now I'm going to lighten this mixture. And I'm going to put the light in here. Kind of comes down. And put the light over top of that. And the light here. There. And then the light on this side is down below. Those extra little strokes the unfinished brush strokes here really helps define softer edges as well. So don't think that you have to make it a crisp edge. And then the lightest shadow itself is always going to be on the side facing the light, or if it's really far away from the object. So I'm going to put some in here. Maybe put a dot there. A little stroke in here. Let's go really light now. And fill that in. Put that a little bit lighter. So it's all about building it up. Put that a little bit lighter. So now we have a nice, very nice shadow. So Uncle 60, I miss my old paints. I've been playing with watercolors for 8 months. Yeah, good luck. I've been playing with watercolors for 10 years. Interesting enough, watercolors is something you use when you're in elementary school and you grow up as a kid using, so you think they're the basic. But really, watercolors are probably the most complicated pigments out there. So now we're going to just put some highlights on the cherries. And so I got a little thinner brush because I do want some control. I'm going to mix my white. And it's a cool color. Doesn't mean I have to add blue to it. Adding the white to one of the pinks that you have on your palette will cool it off in itself. And so I have this stroke here. Kind of comes down here. Now, and what it does, it really does, it comes on this side, and then it comes down, and then it actually comes down in here. And on this one, there's a highlight coming through here. There's a highlight coming past the stem. And those actually merge. Probably didn't have to merge them. And there's a highlight coming up on here. And there's one on this end. And there's a few dots. So I'll put a dot here. Up there. And there's a dot here. And there is a nice highlight right there. And of course we'll bring it up over here. There's a little more reflected light over there. I'll change the value a little bit so it doesn't stand out so much. There's actually a little bit of reflected light right there. And a little reflected light right there. And we'll darken this again, come underneath, because there is some reflected light here, just not as light as the other ones. So I actually have to reduce that value again. Remember, it's all about value, so everything reads well. And I would say there's one here. Give you a chance to redefine that edge. Maybe we'll lighten it a little bit for in here. We'll put a somewhat blue highlight right in here because that's where I see it. There we go. So a little bit of light blue. All right, so this works because this value blue is the same value as the red underneath it. So it reads proper. So this is an instance where color doesn't matter, right? So I've used blue instead of, I'll darken that a little bit, blue instead of red. So that's how you create interest in the painting too, because if you were to just paint cherries with all red, it might not look that great. So we're going to add a little bit of blue here and there to pop it out. To get this highlight reading a little bit better, we are going to put in a cooler version of the red. So maybe we can use this blue that I just mixed. We'll put it over top here. So that's quite cool. It is blue, but that's fine. Add that. There we go. So already it's not coming together, but we need a lighter highlight on top of that. So to get that, I will go back to my smaller brush and I'll mix a light but maybe a touch of yellow. So even though the light is cool, yellow can be cool, but we're going to make it really stand out because we're going to add a little bit of yellow to it. Into the blue. Another one here. And then another one there. And lastly over here, we have a big one on this side with some smaller ones up top. There we are. Excellent. I'm going to use some of this lighter value here to really accentuate these main highlights. As it comes down. So each time I put it down, I'm just laying down a stroke. There we are. And maybe we could use some of this here to accentuate the stem in areas. Maybe get some nice light in there. Maybe some nice light over here. You see that didn't really fit that well. So I'm just going to do an adjust. There we are. Now if you want to get a sense of movement in here, right? You can really just take any object, dry brush, move that over. It really creates a nice soft edge. Maybe what you want to do is bring the object into the background. So we'll put some, we'll put a brush here, we'll bring it down. So now the object comes into the background and vice versa. Maybe over here, this edge is too harsh. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the background into the object. And so as long as it doesn't distract from the painting, you should be good. So it really sits it down. Now we'll fix this here. The value got a little bit too light. Even here, if you want to bring the object into the background a little bit, that's fine. But of course, now you see that this is lightened a bit too much. So maybe we'll go in, we'll darken that up. We'll keep this dark here. We've kind of lost this edge, which is fine. Maybe we want to go back into the blue underneath the cherry here and darken that up a little bit. Adds a little more chroma in there. Chroma just meaning saturation. Right, so make sure that's there. We got to mix this. All right, so overall, quite painterly. Cherries. Make sure this remains dark. Keep the edges soft. Remember though, you want to look at this painting from, 68 feet away, and it really gives you a sense of something painterly. If you want to warm some temperatures up, I'm just taking a CAD red because I see some warm spots within these cherries, specifically right here. I'm just going to add a little bit of CAD red to warm it up. And you'll be amazed how much a little bit works. And we're just going to add a little bit here. Doesn't need a lot. I just want to warm it up a bit. Maybe in here a little bit too. There we go, but I've lost my value structure in there. So I need to come in again with my darks and bring that value back in. There we are. And so this is the fiddly stage now. I mean, it's pretty much done, but I want to bring some warmth in. And I need to adjust some values here and there to get everything correct. I think I'll just darken up this value a little bit. Same thing, the permanent alizarin crimson and some ultramarine blue. If I want a little more heat, I could pump up the alizarin crimson there. Bring that in. If you want, if you like it well enough, you can just take your brush, just add a tiny signature to it. If that makes you feel like it's more complete. So there you have it, how to paint looser. Basically, take your image that you have, or your still life, or your from life still life, scene, landscape, break it into shapes, do a quick sketch on it, outlining where the shapes are, mix your color in the right value first, and then considering the temperature. If later you find that value a little bit too light or dark, you can always come back and adjust it. And then move to the next spot. Look for the correct value of that color you're looking for in the right temperature, etc. Just laying down strokes. Don't go in there and start fiddling. You know, don't start doing this. Don't start doing this, because that can create issues with creating mud and just making everything a little bit more fuzzy and blurry. And if you just follow this process and try not to hold your brush too close to the end, always try to hold it at the end for least amount of control if you want to look really painterly. You know, you could always support your hand and use your brush that way. So it's a pretty simple process. You just got to stick with it, try it over and over and over, and eventually your paintings, you'll find, will become looser and looser. So if you've liked this video and I've earned your subscription, please subscribe, hit that bell button if you can. Otherwise, share it with your friends. I really appreciate you tuning in. And don't forget to watch the previous video as well. And thank you. Cheers, everyone.